Good morning. My name is Richard Bennett, and I have the honor of sharing part of my testimony with you today. I accepted Christ at 16 and have been a growing believer for 46 years. You get to do the math. God has done many wonderful things in that short amount of time, and I would like to share with you what has happened in the last few years. A key turning point in my life came when I realized that God's purpose for me was to help meet the need of others and no longer focus on myself. I consider myself blessed not to have had walked through some of the things you've heard in other testimonies. I'm just an average person who was lost at a young age and was given the opportunity to let God lead the way. By the way, I was told that when I accepted Christ, it would result in one of two possible experiences. Some of you may relate to this. Either a gradual change in my day-to-day or something like electricity running through your body in a drastic, immediate change. Well, I had both. Something I'll never forget, but that's for another time. Most of my important memories are a result of my salvation, my marriage, and the choices God made available to me as a result of these two things. I've been happily married for 37 years and have two awesome adult children. By the way, men, if you want to know if you're happily married, ask your wife, because it really doesn't matter what you think. Cancer is a word that most of us never want to get to know. I'm here to tell you that it has been an unwelcome resident in our lives, showing up briefly and then returning again for a much longer visit. My 30-year-old daughter, who was at the 9:30 service, has survived cancer of the appendix at 15, leukemia 3 years ago, and currently has a 50-50 chance of having stomach cancer as a result of an inherited gene. Through it all, God has remained faithful and even carrying us at times. Now, I see cancer as less something to fear, but more of another challenge and an opportunity to let God get the glory. My wonderful wife, Catherine, shares this stomach cancer gene as well, and is a breast cancer survivor who has recently finished her 7th surgery, the first being a double mastectomy. We live in the shadow of cancer, but God is our daily shining light. One of the hardest things to do is see your family suffer and be able to do nothing about it. I asked God to allow me to take their pain, but he was silent. I figured, okay, it's not about me. So I asked God to tell me, what am I supposed to learn from this, God? He showed me that I was better at serving strangers than I was my own wife. Catherine went through her mastectomy during COVID. This meant she was in isolation in the hospital. I dropped her off at the door and picked her up when she was released. I was not allowed, nobody was allowed to go in. That really was difficult for her emotionally and mentally, and it was difficult for me as well. But I made it even harder when she came home by allowing my sister-in-law, Jan, who's here, thank you, Jan, allowing my sister-in-law, Jan, to be her primary caregiver for the first 2 weeks. Now, she did this out of willingness. I let her. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I withdrew into myself. I was not very helpful and wanted things to return to normal. I needed a kick in the pants. For me, cancer affects more than just the victim. It manifested in me in selfishness, in fear, and withdrawal. Catherine is a better communicator than I am. Between the two of us, and she clearly made me aware of my lack of being involved in her care without intentionally hurting me. Guys, do you know what that's like? Having your wife tell you something, it hurts. We've been through 6 additional surgeries since 2020. Now, I joke about my Yelp review being important in evaluating how I care for her. And she'll tell me, you're doing okay. I have to find humor to help get through pain. God gave Catherine to me because I needed her, even though I thought it was her who needed me. We both have addiction in our family background, and that has affected how we look at things. We both decided in the beginning that we would never use the word divorce. We would grow our marriage intentionally and raise our children contrary to some of the addictive behaviors that we grew up with. Did we do a good job? Well, I've set aside some money for my kids to use for psychotherapy if they feel like we made mistakes, okay? Honestly, most of us do the best we can with what we've got to work with at the time. This is a phrase that one of my closest friends at church uses, and I'm not sure he means it well, but he is, and many others are one of the reasons why without them I wouldn't be as close to Christ as I am. My accountability group, my other men's groups, they push and pull and lead me towards the prize. They've made a tremendous impact on my life as a man, as a husband, and as a father. Becoming a mature Christian who is useful to God means being willing to make changes. Many of these are painful. God whispers. He's allowed me to fail. But more than anything, he's told me to stop being judgmental and be willing to love imperfect people, of which I'm one. I'm grateful he isn't finished with me, but I'm looking forward to seeing him when he is. Thank you.